Part 6 of Chapter 11 deals with qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis assesses the likelihood and impact of identified risks to determine their magnitude and priority. So you can think of qualitative risk analysis as a preliminary risk categorization that will eventually lead to quantification. So it's both categorization and subsequent quantification tool for analyzing, ranking, and prioritizing risks. Some of the tools or techniques for qualitative risk analysis include probability impact matrices, the top 10 risk item tracking technique, and also as a part of all those techniques that we cover, there's another technique that is used, in conjunction with everything else is expert judgment. Because usually all those matrices and top 10 lists of risks, they are constructed by experts, meaning people who understand something about the project, its area, and also risk management in general. So one tool for qualitative risk analysis is the so-called probability impact matrix or chart. Typically it lists the relative probability of a risk occurring, not necessarily expressed with a number, but more like a category. So on one side there is a probability of risk, and on the other side, or on the other axis, there is a relative impact, meaning the relative importance or significance of that risk if it occurs. Sometimes risks are labeled not with numbers but with categories such as high, medium, or low, and those qualitative labels, they estimate the probability, or sometimes specific risk factors can be calculated and expressed in terms of the number. Okay. But strictly speaking, risk factors are numbers that represent the overall risk of a specific event based on their probability of occurrence and the consequence of the project if they do occur. So risk factor is like the eventual quantification of this preliminary subjective qualitative categorization of risks. So with all those ideas being covered, let's look at an example of a probability impact matrix. So here we have a bunch of risks listed, let's say from 1 to 12. So we have a total of 12 risks. Then each risk is placed in a quadrant that shows, first of all, its probability, low, medium, or high, and impact, low, medium, or high. So once you classify your risks as follows, then you can attach certain weights to those categories, and then you can come up with numbers. So risk 12 has a weight or has a priority score of 12, which means it's a high impact, low probability risk. Okay, and then a risk that has high probability and high impact is classified with the rank with a score of 1. Okay, so it depends on what kind of specific numerical categorization is used for these dimensions. Now this is another approach to classifying risks. So here we have probability and then consequences, and then here we have those bands or regions. So like we are placing those risks in those regions, and then we can come up with a quantitative scoring, either using both of those numbers directly, let's say a sum, or weighting them somehow, depending on whether the probability or the consequence has a priority. Another tool for identifying, tracking, and analyzing risk is the so-called top 10 risk item tracking. It's more of a qualitative risk analysis tool that helps to identify risks and maintain an awareness of those risks throughout the life of the project. So you establish top 10 risks, and then you have a periodic review, and during each periodic review, previous rankings can be updated, and also you can update the listings of various risks with summary information regarding the progress made in resolving the risk item. So a top 10 risk item tracking table may look something like this. So here you have risk called inadequate planning. Last month it was, this month it's ranked as number 1 risk. Last month it was second most important risk. So it's been in the top 10 list for 4 months, which means it's a persistent important risk. And here you have a short update in relation to how you're resolving this risk or trying to prevent it from happening. So right now you're working on revising the entire project management plan to make sure that planning is done appropriately, and adequate planning can greatly reduce the risk facing by the company. Now, in relation to in addition to this top 10 list, you can also maintain a watch list. It's a list of risks that are low priority but are still identified as potential risks. So so you have those risks captured, and if necessary, you can elevate their importance. So all in all, just like I said in the beginning of this part, qualitative analysis can help identify and classify risks so that subsequently they can be analyzed in a more numerical or quantitative fashion.